I am here with my guest, Samantha Bergin. She's a CMO currently at Center. So very interesting experience you've had. 2 decades in tech SaaS, leading marketing functions. I'm sure you've learned a lot along that journey. You've probably messed up a few times and have been able to celebrate some things together as a team as well. So Samantha, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Caleb. So excited to be here. So excited to share some insights and hopefully some tips and tools that can be actionable for your listeners.
Let's start here. When you show up to your job and you're playing this great game of marketing leadership, what do you show up as in terms of what's your mindset, your approach, the things you value? How are you playing this game generally as it relates to marketing leadership, leading a function, but also leading the team and the people that are a part of that? What's important to you?
Great question. I would say a couple of things. I think number one, I always try to come with an open mind. I normally have a lot of opinions in my head, but I've learned over time to listen, to come in more as to ask questions and to kind of understand the situation. So I think one is just coming in as a good listener and being very open-minded. I think another one is just creating an environment where people feel like they can share both successes and failures. So like one of my goals and kind of a North Star for me just as a leader is to create an environment where people feel very comfortable to fail. When you create an environment where people feel comfortable to fail, and they tend to also surface things that we all need to know about and that we can together work to improve or to transform or to evolve. And so again, like I think coming in with this mindset of, listen, like this is a safe space. This is a place where we're not only going to do great work, but we're also not always going to get it right every time, I think is super important. So that's a second thing. And then I'd say the third thing is I really believe in leading from behind. I over the years have had the privilege of hiring just really exceptional talent in a variety of different areas of marketing, and I found the most successful kind of executions, the most successful kind of plans and just efforts and activities that we've done are when I'm able to kind of allow the individual to shine. And so being able to kind of remove obstacles and to make sure that we are all clear about where we're going, right? So clarity in what we're trying to achieve, but then allowing each person to kind of achieve that in their way really delivers incredible results in my experience.
I'm going to pull back a few layers on each of those. But before I do, for our listeners, just give us a bit of a summary of the last 2 decades. It's been a variety of exposure you've been engaged in, and probably some very exciting scenarios, startup world, tech SaaS. Just give us a bit of a background in terms of, why you've chosen that path and what called you there. What was your journey like?
Love that. I started out kind of my professional marketing career in product management. Started out at a company called Visio Corporation, drawing and diagramming software here in the Seattle area. I was actually grew up and did all of my education on the East Coast in the United States, and then moved out to the West Coast to work in tech. And so started out as a product manager, really learned a lot and got some just foundational skills around bringing a product to market. After my time at Visio, I actually moved into Microsoft. That was actually through an acquisition. Microsoft purchased Visio. They did not keep the majority of the marketing team, but they allowed the marketing team to interview and find jobs within Microsoft. And so then I ended up in the productivity group within Microsoft. So worked on Microsoft Word and Microsoft Office. Or Microsoft Office and
Yeah.
Microsoft Windows. And that was an incredible experience. I got to do not just B2B there, but also a little bit of B2C. And then I moved into kind of the mid-market business. So worked a lot with VARs, value-added resellers, selling licensing through partners. Again, more B2B there too. So spent some time at Microsoft as well. And then I went to Amazon. And at Amazon, I was there early on. I was a merchant product manager. So managing third-party sellers that were selling on the Amazon platform. So it was just when additional sellers, it wasn't just
Interesting.
Amazon selling on the platform.
The
They were
Wild West.
It was
Wild
the Wild
West.
West. It really, really was. And I was specifically working with consumer electronics companies. And that was really interesting too. So merchandising, finding different ways to surface and improve their sales through basically a new channel for them. And so that was the first part of my career was kind of in Fortune 100 sort of tech companies and in that kind of product management space, really learning how to own a little bit of a business, right? Like when I did the third party sellers work at Amazon, I was helping them build their businesses through a new channel. So it really gave me the ability to kind of understand how to drive revenue and how to build sales and how to forecast and all of those things, in addition to taking a product to market and kind of getting those foundational kind of product marketing as well as go-to-market skills. And then I shifted into the startup world. My first startup was a little company called Cozy, Cozi. It's a family productivity app. It's very similar to Microsoft Office, but imagine it for a family. So it's calendaring, it's shopping lists, it's recipes. Product is still around today.
I might
Um,
need that.
yeah, it's a great product. I still use it today. And it was purchased. I was there for almost 10 years and led marketing, came in as a marketing director and ultimately departed, having been the marketing leader and on the executive team there. And we sold to Time Inc. So Time Inc. purchased Cozy. There was a really beautiful marriage with Real Simple magazine. We had done some work with them, and they purchased us, and really left the business alone, because it was a software company within Time Inc. And so I was there almost 3 years after the acquisition, learned a little bit about the publishing business, also very challenging. They were just starting to put paywalls up and trying to diversify the way that they drive sales and drive revenue. And then I went to my next startup, which was a little healthcare technology company. And that was pre-product. So when I came in, there was an idea, and I was like hire number under 20. Like I was the first marketing hire, and there was a very small business at that point. And I was there for a little over 7 years, and really built the marketing function at the organization. So again, like we defined the original product, the value proposition, took that first product to market, evolved the different kind of segments that we were targeting, and ultimately onboarded and brought on a bunch of customers. And that technology was really primary care physicians delivered via a text-based app. And we sold to employers, and then we also sold to health plans and health systems. And it was a really, really interesting business. And then most recently, I'm the CMO of Center. Center is an expense management solution connected to a corporate card. And so I've been here, it'll be 3 years actually next month, and lead the marketing function here as well. So started out kind of in big tech, and then moved into kind of the startup space, and have been building teams and building brands and building pipeline and revenue ever
Wow.
since.
I would imagine you can validate if this is true, but the three-part approach that you talked about, you're coming in and listening, seeking to understand, making people feel safe and creating a foundation of trust so that you can ultimately achieve amazing things. And then thirdly, leading from the flank, from behind. Were those, I would imagine, sort of pieced together in terms of how you're playing the game throughout that journey, through seeing it in action or needing to do it circumstantially?
100% yes, I learned it over time and not at the same time, right? Like there were plenty of times where I didn't get it right, or that I wasn't able to achieve the team performance that we were looking to achieve. And it was really about kind of the failures and learning from the failures and making tweaks to kind of improve each time we went at bat, to get better. And so those are things that I think are super important. Like I think outside of work, I ride and train horses, and I compete the horses as well. And so one of the things that I find myself doing is things that I learn kind of on the sports field, world are things that also apply in my day-to-day business. And this is something absolutely applicable on both sides, right? Like you're actually losing more than you're winning in sports. And so if you're not making adjustments along the way to get better each time, like what are you doing? And
Exactly.
so it's kind of the same thing with business, right? It's like you have to fail. You can't be afraid of failure. You can't be afraid of getting it wrong because you're going to need to get it wrong to get it right, right? Like there's that
Mm,
saying that experience is the thing you needed right after you needed it, right? Like I
right.
live my life that way. Like I'm seeking those things out. I'm operating kind of on the edge of my skills at times because that's what makes me better. That's what helps me grow. That allows me to kind of push my boundaries to kind of round out my skill set even more. So
Interesting.
so yes, over
I
time
think
it's
this is a great word of encouragement for marketing leaders at different stages of their journey that you're always sort of building your toolkit for tomorrow and perhaps don't miss out on the opportunity to do that. You're obviously driving the mandate that you have within the marketing function for that company, but you are slowly piecing together your toolkit, aren't you, to be the best version of tomorrow, of yourself tomorrow, whether that be at the same company or someone else. And that's where somewhere else I've seen exemplification through what you're sharing to that point.
100%. The other thought I had just to kind of tack on to this topic, and something that might be helpful for your listeners too, depending on the career stage that they're in. But like one of the things I tell folks that ask me for advice is I suggest that they don't specialize too early, right? Like being able to do a variety of things early on in your career actually helps you later on. It gives you a more kind of holistic perspective around decision making, right? Like understanding what a product mind is thinking, understanding what an engineering mind is thinking,
Right.
and so that you're considerate and empathetic to those around the table and other functions within a business. So this idea of like everything you just said, kind of rounding out your toolkit, but also, don't specialize too early. Because it does give you, I think, a more holistic perspective when you're going to be making the decisions.
Is there anything interesting you've learned about yourself over your career journey, something that you didn't know earlier, or you came to an understanding that this perhaps is a superpower for you, or on the other side, it's an Achilles heel area for you? Has anything identified and become clear such that right now it is kind of part of your marketing leadership DNA?
I'd say a couple of things. I'd say one thing, the first thing that came to mind when you asked that question is early on in my career, I never thought I wanted to be a manager. I always
Um,
wanted to be like the most senior individual contributor possible. I thought that was my calling. I would see, like principal product managers, and I was like, that's what I want to be. I just didn't think that was something that inspired me or motivated me to grow others. And what I've discovered by being put in those positions is that is what motivates me. Like that is the core of who I am. So this whole idea of kind of leading from behind, I feel like that is one of my superpowers. Like I get energy from seeing my team members succeed. And I couldn't be more proud of my team when they're succeeding. Like that is what gets me up every day is basically clearing obstacles for them and letting them shine. And I do the same thing with my horses, right? Like I think about, I want them to achieve what they want to achieve. It's a little different because like I guess if you just put a horse out in the wild, they're not going to go jump big things and
yeah, yeah,
and go excel in sport, but you get the idea, right? Like
yeah.
I like to produce these sport horses to shine, and it's the same with my team members. So something that originally I didn't think I'd be interested in at all is now my why. It's like why I
That's
come to
really
work every
interesting.
day. So
I've
that's
I've I've been curious
something.
about that. This topic has come up for me recently a lot more, and there was an interesting conversation I had around that same thing where there's passion and joy and energy around putting people in the right seats and creating an environment in which they can operate in their zone of genius. And my curiosity for you is, what about that is personally fulfilling? Like if you really get down into it, how do you where do you draw fulfillment from in seeing the growth of others? I'm curious what your take is on that.
My take is I feel like it's this might not be the best description, but I think we'll get there and you'll get what I mean. But it's like almost like a puzzle, right? Like it's if you can create the right environment
Right.
for that individual to shine, it's like you're figuring out the puzzle pieces to enable that person to be what they were meant to be. There's a book I read, and I'm not going to quote, I think it's the Netflix book, the one it's about the Netflix
Okay. Okay.
story. But in there, they talk about this idea of like, you don't tell people, you don't give people a map with the route to get there, right? Like you give people like the goal of where you're wanting to go, and then you allow the people that are really good on the water and are really good at kayaking to get there by water.
Right.
You allow the people that are really good at hiking and are really good at scaling mountains to get there,
Right.
by climbing the mountain. You get the runners to go up the trail, right? Like, but if you told everyone to take the trail for the runners and the people that are really good at kayaking like can't use
Yeah.
that skill, like that's not interesting. So
Yeah.
that's what I think about is this idea of like creating the right environment, supplying them with the right resources, giving them the right kind of motivation and inspiration, and keeping the bar high. Like I'm not saying like
Yeah.
the bar, there's no bar, right? Like there absolutely is. Like quality work is exceptionally important to me. And like that's a requirement, right? Like that's like the baseline, but allowing people to kind of operate in their style and
Yeah.
in kind of shining the light on the things that they do really well, like the kayakers versus
I
the
love
hikers,
that.
right? Like that sort of idea. Um, that's what I get energy out of. It's almost like a puzzle that I was able to put together or was able to dismantle in the right way. I don't really know how to
Totally.
say,
Well,
but you get
yeah,
the
for sure.
idea,
The
right? That's
fulfillment
where I get
comes
the
at
energy.
the end of the day, looking back and seeing this mosaic of
Yes.
unique, interconnected pieces. But ultimately, that's one of the main testaments, or I guess characteristics of a leader is that they exist to unearth the possibility and potential in others. Right. That's kind of that's
Yes. And
awesome.
and the individual, like when they look back and they're like, thank you for
Yeah.
making me believe I could do that, right? Like that, there's nothing better than something like that. Or them looking back and being like, I didn't even know I could accomplish these things, right? But it
Right.
was like the right timing, the right environment, the right effort, the right resources behind it, right?
Yeah.
All of it came together to create this magical thing, and we get to celebrate that together, and that's magical.
I agree. Um, Over your career and maybe even in the current state, not relying on things like KPI reports and charts and things, is there anything that you rely on in terms of like a gut feel or something less quantitative to be able to discern for yourself whether or not you did a good job that day, whether or not you made impact? Is there anything you've come to rely on that's not measurable that gives you that peace of mind driving home at night or whatever to say, I was I fulfilled my mandate today or something like that?
Hmm, that's a toughie. I want to say there is. Putting a finger on it is what's challenging. I think for me, when I feel good, like when I look in the mirror at night or the next morning and kind of reflect on my day, for me, it's about um, these things are very clear. I just don't know if it's exactly answering your question, but I'm going to go anyways.
Yeah, no. Well,
This
like you
idea
said, we'll get
of
there.
yeah, being clear, right? Like I was clear in my communications. Nobody feels confused. Like I've helped simplify things for my team in some fashion. Another one is just being fair, right? Like I
Mm,
think, life's not fair. So that word is just a tough one for me, but me being fair in the way that I asked of something of someone or in, feedback I provided on a document that I was asked to review.
yeah.
But just being again like clear, consistent, fair, expecting quality work so that I know that we're driving the right outcomes for the business, um, and making sure I create kind of the spaces required to solve problems. So if there's things that we're challenged around and I know that we need to make some sort of progress on a decision or on a body of work or on something like that, like we've made some sort of progress on that thing
Yeah.
the day before, right? Like then I feel good about we're covering the things that aren't working, right? Like we're making progress and improving the things that aren't working. And I've added something of value to my team, like been
Yeah.
clear, helped simplify something, helped, unblock something, or just helped make some sort of progress from the day before. I think those things make me
Hmm.
feel good and make me feel like I'm helping something be better than it was if I were not there, right? Like I feel like that to me is what I want to be doing. I don't want to be taking away from anyone or slowing anyone down. I want to either be slowly chipping away at a problem or I want to be moving things forward.
Right. Are you a fairly reflective person and leader?
Very much so.
How do you
Um,
look in the rear view? How have you been able to create balance and energy and impact around, I guess, simultaneously or at least parallel, looking in the rear view mirror, but also being committed to results and driving iterative growth forward? Because I think
yes.
that's an important nut to crack for leaders as they grow into leaders, right?
No, very much so. I like this idea of thinking a few years ahead and looking back on the time right now. I do this all the time and I do it with different sorts of time horizons. So, like, I'll look a year from now or 2 years from now and I'll look back and I'll be like, what will I want to say we've accomplished? Or what will I
Yeah.
want the function to look like? Or, like, what is this year about for us? Like, thinking about it at kind of the 60,000 foot level, not the day-to-day effort, but like, is this year about pipeline build? Is this year about refinement of our ICP, ideal customer profile? Like to me, I like to look back and then kind of bubble things up at a very high level to either to contemplate like, are we focused on the right things? Like a year from now, when I look back, will we have done the things that I think we need to do? And like, what is this year about? Or what is this quarter about? Like, what are we trying to accomplish at the highest level?
Yeah.
And I reflect that way, kind of by bubbling things up or by looking back on specific
Hmm.
time horizons.
That's smart. You're almost like people love storytelling and stories. You're almost like defining what does a story sound like. And
Yes.
then if you have people that feel safe and trusted and empowered to do their thing, the other thing that we know about people is they like having their thumbprint on the creation of a story. So that's pretty interesting. You're drawing the sandbox in terms of like, here's the plot, here's the conclusion. How do we rely on the cast of characters to draw in the unique components of this story?
Little stories that
Yeah,
happen within, right? Exactly. Love
interesting.
that. I love that.
What lessons can be learned for marketing leadership or coaching from sports and specifically the sport that you spend a bunch of time in? What are some connection points between that?
Yeah, I'd love to share some of those. We've already talked about being fair and clear. I think that's one that is very much applicable. I lean into, and it is something that is very day to day for me in sport and training horses. Another one is really that specialized one that we talked about. Don't specialize too early. That very much applies on the equestrianism side as well. Is you want the horses to be well rounded and kind of be all around athletes before they kind of get into one specific area. And so that is very much another one. Another one is this idea of celebrating wins, like celebrating progress and not feeling like, each of us individually as just humans, like especially, us that have these big goals that we want to go after, we tend to not be satisfied. But
Yeah,
imagine you're training a horse, imagine you're training for some sport and your coach is never satisfied. That is a horrible feeling. Like I put myself in my horse's shoes, and if I'm never satisfied with anything that they do, like at some point they're going to shut down and they're going to be like, I give up. Like I can't get anything right. So another thing I think about is celebrating progress, celebrating little wins. And that's something that I apply to work as well, because sometimes it's easy to, just day to day keep going and doing our jobs, but
yeah,
it is super important to stop and celebrate little wins, progress, things that you've been working
totally.
on that you haven't made. Maybe you're not at the end game yet, but any sort of like little milestones, I think it's important to do that because it keeps people inspired and enjoying what they like.
Yeah, I wonder why we don't celebrate. Like, is it a thing where if we celebrate, we feel that we're signaling that we've arrived, we've done anything, or maybe there's like you don't want to leave room for complacency. I've always been fascinated with why we don't take those moments, but
It might be because we feel like we're not there yet, right? And it's like,
yeah.
okay, but you can celebrate moments along the way.
There was a couple other interesting concepts in the article in terms of these parallels between the two worlds. But one of them was sometimes you have to go slow to go fast, and the other one was being comfortable being uncomfortable. Can you pull that back a bit? Why is that
Yeah.
important?
Yeah, both of those. So sometimes having to go slow to go fast, like to me, that is foundational. Like I think about, mastering the basics, not just on the writing side, but also on the marketing function side. And it's something that, my team is also knows that that's of importance, is like having the proper mechanisms, having the proper instrumentation. So we're able to track the things that we're doing to make sure that they're working. So again, like it's foundational for scale, right? Like you
Right.
have to have the basics down pat in order to be able to build on top of that. It's like building a house as well, right? Like you want to have a stable foundation before you start putting things on top of it. That's the idea. So you have to go slow in order to go fast. I also tell my team, they all know this story. I talk about how bamboo grows. I don't know if you know how bamboo
No.
grows, but it's basically something that you put into the ground. You put the seeds in the ground, you have to till. It has to be in really, really good soil. And then you water it, and you water it for a year, for 2 years, for 3 years, for 4 years, for 5 years, and
What?
nothing is happening above the surface. And then
Crazy.
in that fifth year, like the stalks, they just shoot up. And so it's this idea of like to create that foundation underneath of the bamboo that makes it so strong. Like bamboo is very difficult to kill once it's up. And that's because of that foundation underneath, right? So that's all about going slow to go fast. And I'm going to get this wrong, but it's directionally correct. But I think they shoot up like 90. I don't know. They shoot
I've
up
been
very
in
fast.
forests with bamboo.
Okay.
Yeah, they're as high as
Yeah.
you can see, right?
They're
So
as high as you can see. So
and
um,
used as building material,
very
like
strong.
in that form, just pull it out and it's a stick or a
Thick,
piece of
and it's very, very strong. So that's just, I think, a basic, and you can apply it to so many different things in business. And then the getting comfortable being uncomfortable. There are so many incredible equestrian stories related to
yeah.
this. One of my coaches that I ride with, he is an Olympic gold medalist from the UK, and he talks about this idea of like he was at the Olympics. I think it was the Atlanta Olympics, and he was riding for Great Britain. And his coach basically said to him, if you are feeling uncomfortable, or if you're feeling comfortable galloping around on the cross country course, you're not going fast enough, right?
Right.
Like you're not going to make time. You got to feel uncomfortable. And so he tells us in a way more entertaining narrative, but this idea of like sometimes you just got to get comfortable being uncomfortable. Again, we talked about working on the edges of your skill set in order to really
Mhm.
grow and to push yourself. And I think there's so many different kind of use cases that you can apply this kind of philosophy or this approach to, but it's really this idea of like growth is uncomfortable, and it's okay to go there, and it's okay to fail, as long as you learn from it and you do better next time you're in that similar situation. Like that's the whole idea. It's not just falling down, but it's how you get up each time. So
I love it.
so many different things related to that, but I very much live my life with these sorts of
Yeah.
approaches and
No, it's
philosophy.
very apparent. And I love, I'm a big sports guy too. So I just think there's endless parallels between those worlds. And we have an advantage, I think, in some cases, if we being those that have sports in their background.
Totally agree.
Tell me about one of the biggest challenges for marketing leaders is finding the right team structure. So who
Mm,
to hire, what from a marketing perspective, what combination of it should be fully in-house versus relying on external partnership. And there's like thousands of permutations, combinations of ways you can build this. But as it relates to building the right team structure to do what needs to be done. How have you approached that? Because it's not
that's a
straight
great
line.
question too. No, it's not a straight line. And I think the context of the business, the stage of the business, like what you're trying to accomplish, like what we talked about earlier, like what is this year about? What is the next 18, 24 months about? So really understanding what you're trying to achieve as a function, as a part of the greater business and the stage of business. I think that is applicable, and kind of an input to deciding how you're shaping the team. I think also understanding kind of the skill sets that reside in the business already, right? So at Center, it was a different sort of context than it was at 98.6, where I was right
Yeah.
before, which, I was the first marketing hire. There was no marketing team.
Yeah.
Different from Cozy, where there were three people on the marketing team when I joined it, right? And there were very specific things that we were trying to accomplish. The product was in beta. It was then going to be generally available, all those sorts of things. So really understanding kind of what you're trying to achieve as a business, what the marketing function is kind of responsible for and is being looked to help the business accomplish. And then looking at the skill sets. If you already have existing talent that you are kind of shaping an organization around, that also helps inform what you outsource versus what you keep in house. But I think it's all related to context of the business, like what you're looking to accomplish, what the marketing function needs to specifically achieve, and in some sort of time horizon. Maybe you're looking at like a 1 to 3 year sort of thing. Specific skill sets that you need on the team or that you don't have on the team and are required in-house versus what you can balance with external support. Because sometimes external support is something that could be front loaded, right? Like if you need specific kind of website help to get a website up because it's like your first website, like maybe you don't need necessarily visual design in house. It's something you can do out of house,
Right.
and instead bring on something else that you need kind of longer term ongoing day to day, inside house.
Right.
Could be a better way to kind of invest the resources, because the resources do tend to be limited, as we all know,
Yeah.
at a startup or a growth stage company. And so again, being very thoughtful about trade-offs and understanding kind of how long you're going to need a specific set of skills, can also help you decide. I don't think there's any like right way, like it
Yeah.
must be this way. And I think even the leader's skill set is obviously applicable to this too, because depending on the skill set that the leader brings, or the individual that's been brought on to build the team or shape the team or grow the team, I feel like our time can be flexed,
Right.
very easily, right? Depending on what the business needs. And so depending on what skill sets the leader has as well, they can kind of be an individual contributor for a certain period of time before you need to add some actual
Right.
ICs to do that work. And then you can step back, if
Right.
if possible, sort of thing. So many different kind of inputs and context and goals
Yeah.
to consider, but I don't think there's one way. I think it's
No, there
really
is, but I like what you said. Really, how I heard it was, understand the business case at any given period of time because there's going to be differences in different seasons or chapters of the business. So
right.
what is the business case that needs to be impacted or fulfilled by a marketing function? And then what are the jobs to be done in order to have that? What are the corresponding expertise areas? And then it's being thoughtful about how can we allocate current internal resources towards that? How can I play cover for a period of time? You're kind of balancing the whole time, but never sinking your teeth into one, this is the way to do it. And I think that that's the interesting takeaway here is that because there's no one way to do it, it's all about making sure you're thoughtful in its connection to the business result, but then you're balancing at all times,
You
perhaps.
got it. And allowing it to flex too. And I think the other thing that I keep in my head too is like there are only a certain number of decisions that are kind of one-way doors, right? Versus two-way doors. So like
Ah,
sometimes there are things that you can do and you can decide, oh, this is not working. I actually do need to hire somebody in-house, right? Like that's the nice thing too of hiring out of house and doing it kind of in a part-time basis versus hiring somebody full-time and then feeling like, oh gosh, I don't really have a role for that specific skill set that's full time. So sometimes even making a decision if you need to make it faster with kind of an external, outsourced part-time help, and then you can decide over time if it's really needed in-house. I think that's also a nice thing too, is think about the things that are decisions that you can make that you could then change very easily versus bringing somebody in full time and then not actually needing that skill set for the long
I love
term.
it. This might be a tough one, but I'm curious, is there anything that throughout your career you've been told by books, by colleagues, by the people out there that uh, this is how it's done? Is there something you've been told over your career that this is true that you no longer believe is true about marketing and marketing leadership? a way that it has to be done that is kind of like the textbook way to do it, but you no longer believe it's true based on your experiences?
The thing that comes to mind for me, I think in general, I've worked in very kind of open-minded, very I've not encountered a lot of this
Yeah,
myself, but I have read in books things. And one of the things, and I think about this more often than I would actually think I would, this idea of like the way brands should be.
right.
So this, well, I'm just going to spit it out. So and by that I literally mean visually, right? Like you read in books that a brand, like a
Yeah,
logo or a word mark or some sort of brand mark should always have room around it to breathe. It should never be locked up with something else. Like there's all of these kind of necessarily rigid rules,
rules.
just
Yeah,
rules around them that people have always felt very strong about. And what you start noticing, especially like every year that goes by, people seem to be much more liberal with brands and word marks than they used to be. And I think that's just because like the times have changed, right? Like people don't only want a swoosh in one color. They want a swoosh in any color they choose. They want it in a rainbow. They want it in ombre. Like, but I'm
yeah,
sure there was a time that the swoosh could only be one color, one solid color, and that's all
yeah.
that was allowed, right? And so that's something I think about
I
this. I
agree.
don't know why, but you see things and you're like, that didn't used to be allowed in kind of the branding world.
Yeah,
Like you weren't allowed to do a lockup with this brand and this brand or have an X or have a line or any of these sorts of things. And I feel like now it's like, does it look good? Does it accomplish the thing that you're trying to accomplish? Does it associate two brands that are like-minded and like
yeah,
that's what you're trying to lean into? So I just feel like there's some rules around kind of general branding that not that they've gone out the window, but I think people are a little bit more
I
open-minded
agree.
about it.
Yeah, that's funny you bring that up. I think about that all the time. And
It's just weird.
funny, the way I would describe it is think about it more often than I thought I would, just like you said that. But I think if you're like you guys are, from my understanding, is very customer centric. So if you're customer centric, you should really throw the rules out because if you have predefined assumptions or rules, then it really doesn't foster customer centricity, does it? Because
No, it really
unless
doesn't.
you're like totally lucky and you
Right.
just,
Unless you're totally, totally lucky. But even with like we have a co-branded version of our center card.
yeah,
And we recently just tweaked some colors and tweaked some kind of layout for these different cards. And I was thinking, gosh, like two startups ago, this would have taken me a year to approve because nobody would have been okay with two brands on the front of the card, right?
right,
Like there's all these things. But like nowadays, you can't think that way. Like
yeah,
you can't think that way anymore.
yeah,
And so it's just it's an interesting evolution over time of being customer centric and being thoughtful about what other people are trying to accomplish with the asks that they're making, and being able to serve people well. So yeah, it's interesting.
leave us with this. And you already talked about it a little bit, but a final word on what I'm hearing a lot lately is talk to marketing managers and directors that had previously been coordinators or individual contributors, but they are on this path because they desire growth to senior leadership from like a CMO or a VP. So like if you're imagine you're talking to a younger sort of marketing coordinator or manager that has aspirations to take on a CMO role, what are some of the foundational things that they should be thinking about right now to sort of best set them up for that healthy growth? Should they be going full speed ahead? Should they be like, what would you say to yourself 15 years ago?
Love that question. I would say build your skill set. Don't specialize too early. Find opportunities to grow in a variety of different areas because you might discover things about your skill set, about things that you love and things that you're passionate around that you might not know today. So take the opportunity to like seek out roles where you're getting to do not just getting good at the things you're already good at, but also seeing if you're good at other things, right? So get add to your skill set, find opportunities to learn from different sorts of leaders. I think that's something I've been very lucky to do over time. And then cultivate those relationships. So even if you
Mhm.
meet a leader, have a manager, or have a skip skip level that you're
Yeah.
develop a relationship with. Maintain those relationships outside of work, even if you don't no longer work together. So one of the most powerful things I've done over time, somebody told me this early on in my career, is to cultivate those relationships with those leaders. And they don't even need to be in marketing. Like
Yeah.
one of mine is a CTO. One of mine is the CEO, right? So again, it doesn't have to be necessarily in the marketing function. I think it helps to have that, but I
Yeah.
think also seek outside of that and cultivate those relationships and keep those over time, because that network is one of the most powerful things you will build throughout your career. And also don't be afraid to try different sorts of contexts. And what I mean by that is, I started my career in big tech. So I started out in larger organizations and then moved into kind of the startup world. If you're in the startup world today, don't be afraid to spend some time in a large organization and understand the dynamics, understand how to make things work when there are, multiple people doing similar jobs and you're having, people don't love that because they feel like there's too many layers and they don't
Yeah.
get to own anything end to end, but there's other things that you'll learn in those sorts of environments. So find ways to kind of experience different sorts of environments, because it's going to help you be able to navigate different sorts of
Yeah.
situations better in the future.
I love it.
So I would say those things.
I love it.
And then the fourth thing I would say is be yourself, be authentic, be you. Don't forget to be your unique self in your career, because companies are hiring full individuals, right? And that includes not just how we show up to work, but also who we are. And so don't be afraid to be your authentic self day in and day out.
That's awesome. Thank you so much for giving us a peek behind the curtain on how you're playing this game, this great game of marketing leadership. There's a lot of different ways to play it, and I think you're exemplifying that fact right there. So thank you so much, Sam, for being on the show.
Thank you so much for having me. It was a pleasure. 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 It was a pleasure.